Hello and welcome to the Better Business Podcast. My name is Alexei, and today I've got a very interesting guest. I've got Kevin Gammie with me today. Hey, Kevin.
How are you going?
Good, mate. Good. Thanks for finding the time to join us on the podcast, mate. It's been a goal of mine to get you on the podcast for quite some time, and you being busy, me being busy, these things don't happen very quick, mate. There's obviously a lot that we can talk about. Your main business right now is a business called TrueProof, but there's obviously a bit of a story as to how you got to that business. I met you probably close to 8 or 9 years ago now. And back then you were a business coach.
Yeah.
Mate, there's been so much of a transition in that particular period. Can you tell us exactly how you've come from that consulting, coaching background towards running an online store?
Yeah, it's not a straight path, that's for sure. So really interesting story is that I was a recruiter and had my own recruitment business for 15 years. Over that time, there was a GFC, left the recruitment industry because GFCs and recruitment don't really go hand in hand. From there, I went into business consulting because I didn't want people going through what I'd gone through. And it was a very lonely place in the whole thing. So with that, I started learning about the coaching side of stuff and looking at how could I help people overcome the different challenges and the mindsets that they had. And that's how I got into the business coaching side of it. With that, I started the community of business, small business, knew nothing about social media, and I still believe that I only scratch the surface. But with that, I was growing a business community here in Brisbane, slowly to start with, but with a lot more momentum over time. And that community, currently has 20,000 small business owners in it. The consulting side of it, I looked into what was holding people back in their business and what was, why businesses were and weren't successful, and why business owners, what were they doing to either, who was successful, why they were successful, and those that weren't, what was stopping them. And most of it is in your head, unfortunately. So with that, I was focused on helping people build a business that was designed how they wanted to design it. Over time, the business of business, small business kept growing and kind of took on a life of itself. And we now have a general manager looking after that. And we've started implementing programs into that community to help people get over some of those challenges. How I got onto selling dog beds is a bit of a funny story. We one of our dogs died, and we got a new puppy, and it happened to be a beagle. And we had an old Basset, new beagle, and they became best buds. But the new beagle decided it liked eating beds, thought they were chew toys, and kept getting better and better and better at destroying them. And there was nothing around that people could buy. I got frustrated with that and thought, if I can't buy anything, I can't be the only idiot in Australia that can't train a dog. I will admit I'm probably Australia's worst dog trainer. And just as a hobby, just started selling the dog beds. At the start of last year, which is 2022, I was actually running a group training program that lasted 6 months, and everybody had a project. And once we'd allocated and identified what project would be good for everyone in the group, they said, "And what are you going to do?" And I said, "Well, I'll make sure you guys are succeeding." And they said, "Yeah, not good enough. We want you to do this with your dog beds because there's a business there and you're not taking it seriously." I went, "Okay, I'll take that challenge on." And the dog beds took off in a straight line.
Wow.
So that's how I went from being business consultant to building a business community and then selling dog beds.
That's very interesting. I clearly remember the first time we caught up, I asked you, what is it that you do? And you said, "I help people with clarity," because clarity is the one thing that really helps them. And I can see how, it's very challenging for a business owner to often find that clarity, because you end up in the sea of all this tasks. You're multitasking between running your business, paying bills, doing the accounting, reconciliation, marketing, and so on. It's pretty full on. So we've got obviously quite a few people listening, but I do want to ask you, when it comes to clarity and people getting more clear about their business and potentially building up that business, have you got any tips for any of our listeners?
Yeah. to simplify it. And look, the simplest way of thinking about this is to identify the simplest challenge that people, that your customers are absolutely frustrated by. When you start focusing on the problems that they're having, stop focusing on what you do. Start thinking about their problems and helping them solve that. Because when they can see that you can help them solve their problem, that's when they'll become your customer.
I think that's a good way to put it. I think the whole clarity side of things is huge. And look, there's many ways to look at it, but I find that a lot of people who come to us for marketing, for example, are too blinded by the fact that they want leads. And oftentimes they don't realize that their business actually isn't built to grow. And the whole clarity side of things just becomes completely different. I fully agree that if you understand the customer's needs and the value that you actually bring to resolve a particular problem, that actually aligns with the business and the growth, and everything else just tend to unfold quite naturally.
Absolutely. And, the first thing you need to do is to go, do enough people have this problem for me to create a business that's sustainable? When the answer to that is yes, go, great. So if all of those people came to you tomorrow, could you serve them? And if the answer is no, go, that's awesome, because it gives you the ability to grow through the different processes. Okay. And you'll hit a number of tipping points. Okay. When I look at my dog beds, I came to you because you're an e-commerce expert. You've actually taken a business from nothing to $1 million within 12 months. And I said, great. So do that with my dog beds, and I probably meddled too much. He's nodding far too much here.
Well, look, taking a business from 0 to 7 figures was quite an experiment, and this isn't something that I wasn't really going to talk about, but I've got an online store that did really well just at the back of COVID, and I think it was just the perfect alignment of stars, as well as obviously understanding how the marketing works behind the scenes, because once you understand how to do something, and it's really all about making sure you align it with all the other factors, exactly how you said, the customer's needs, their wants, their worries. How do you service them in a particular way to actually make your product more superior? And we found that people were required to basically have those smoke alarm installed by legislation by a certain date. And we took advantage of that. We actually dominated that whole niche, ranking our website above Bunnings and a lot of other competitors, coming up with a very good product that we found and pushing it forward. So when you came to me with the dog bed idea, I thought, I could see how your product aligned really well with the customer, how it was priced, and how basically it was solving a particular problem. So for me, it was really a no-brainer.
If only we can get legislation involved. I mean, that would be awesome.
Absolutely. Mate, let's talk about the BSB, Brisbane Small Business, because I actually didn't realize that group existed until about the COVID time, because as you obviously get stuck at home, you start, browsing Facebook a bit more, and it was like, hey, Kevin started popping up a fair bit, and you did quite a few podcasts. And I think, it was really important to keep people engaged and motivated, and potentially give them a little bit of hope as to, how everything was moving forward. So tell us about BSB. How did that sort of come about as a group?
Look, as I said, my journey was with recruitment and global financial crises. They're not really great friends, right? When everybody's laying off staff, the last thing they want to do is pay a recruiter to help them hire someone. Okay, so we went from having a $3.5 million turnover to under 500,000 in a heartbeat. And, we had 15 staff, massive office right on Queen Street Mall, which is Australia's most expensive commercial real estate. And so it was not a fun time. And as the business owner, I didn't have an outlet. I didn't have anyone that we could talk to. There weren't the communities that there are today around. So part of moving into the business consulting side, I decided, look, small business shouldn't be lonely. It is, but it shouldn't be. You've got, 98% of Australian business is small business. And yet they're all completely disenfranchised, and the government like it that way, but we won't go into that part of it. And I thought, if we could only get them to work together and to support each other and to help each other create a safe environment where they can go, then we can start having them all be much stronger, because we are stronger together. And governments like the concept of that, but then they want to control the process. And so we've not allowed governments to overly influence what happens within that community. We've tried to be friends with them, and yet at the same time, they've done everything to not support that community. So, and not as individual businesses, but as a community as a whole. They wanted to use us as an advertising space, but didn't want to pay us for advertising. So therefore that set up the ground rules that, well, hang on, we're not going to advertise your stuff if you're not going to help us survive. So that was that side of it. How the community was going is we made sure it was always a safe place. We put rules in there and we obeyed them, and we made sure everybody else obeyed them. You know, if people started getting nasty or narky on the site, we kicked them out straight away. We made sure that people could ask any questions, not feel like they were dumb questions, make sure it was a nice, safe place and people could help each other out. We then created, as a group grew, we did need to create an environment of who can post and who can't. So we did put some price points in there, and very low price points. And a lot of people said, you can't charge me to put a post on Facebook. And I said, of course I can't, but I can charge you to post in our group. So, you know, because the reason people were wanted to post in the group was for advertising, whether they wanted to call it that or not. Oh no, I'm just trying to help people. Well, we're all trying to help people. And so, you know, so with that, we created, you know, what has now become our Platinum Club, which is a group that do have the rights to post into there. They have to do it. They can't just post ads in because nobody wants to sit there and read through ads. But they had to post in quality content. And this is what was happening through COVID. We're inviting people into that, you know, what's become the Platinum membership, so that they could share their best tips to help other small business owners get through a certain thing and therefore become, you know, the expert in their field. You know, some people love that. Some people don't like the fact that we do that. You know, at the end of the day, small business has to be an entity that can run in and of itself and be profitable, or it can't exist because we can't do the admin if we don't have funding. So it's one of those things. It is a bit chicken and egg. And look, we'd love to give everybody the ability to do stuff for free, but then we'll go broke. And so that's where I had to step back and had to start looking after myself. And after getting business through COVID and giving them hope and helping them, you know, at one stage we were doing 3 live stream shows a day because people were in despair. And my concern is that if they can't, if they're not selling at that stage, if their business isn't moving forward, let's give them content that can help them improve their business for when they can start moving forward again. And let's help them move forward. My real concern was that people would be in very dark places if they didn't have that support. And, you know, by and large, people in the community did appreciate what I was doing. Some didn't, and that's okay. You can't make everyone happy all the time.
Yeah. Well, look, I think your Platinum membership ends up being something like $10 a week or something like that, which is more than affordable for reaching quality people. And I think having a format for people not just post ads, because that's pretty boring, and actually encourage them to create, you know, positive content that's valuable is really something that creates a bit of a theme for the group altogether. I am involved in a couple of groups myself, so I do know the fact that, you know, you start the whole thing based on enthusiasm, something that you like, and then over time it does become full-time work, and people do expect you to do really well, monitor certain things, respond to certain people, ban some people. And, you know, while you're thinking, hey, there's only a couple of thousand people there and only a few posts a day, there's actually a lot of the stuff that happens behind the scenes. Just about every single person wants to contact you directly, ask you questions. Nobody ever reads the rules. So if you guys are listening to this, that's totally normal. But you'll find out the hard way that your post potentially won't appear or your comment may not go through. But that's what requires to run a group in a sustainable way over a period of time. Otherwise, you'll find a lot of groups that are started and then they abandoned, or basically someone else comes to power, and you'll see, you know, big changes happening to the groups. One day you come there and everyone's friendly, another day everyone wants to have a go at you, and people purely don't have a guide. They don't have a structure as to how to run a group. There are some recommendations by Facebook, and Facebook actually gets involved quite a fair bit. there's certain words or certain things you may say that are controlled globally. Certain, let's say politically correct or incorrect terms that you may use, and Facebook will act very quickly, whereas some things actually go through and no one really notices them for a long time, even though a lot of people aren't very happy about it. So I understand that whole part. But I think, having groups like that over COVID especially was really, really important. First of all, everyone got locked up at home, had a lot of time on their hands and really wanted to communicate, and all the communication was really taken away. I found that quite a few people have actually created some really good partnerships over the COVID period because of groups like yours. So, mate, well done. That's really awesome.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
And that's where we're trying to get people out, have live events on a monthly basis, make sure we do that. We have, one that you help us with during the day, and as a lunch and learn. We have another function that's in the evening. We're going to get you to come and talk at that soon too.
Great. No worries.
So, and it's, basically it's around getting people out live. You're going to accelerate your business faster. The fastest way to build your business is to build great relationships, and you're not going to do that online. You need to have a mixture of getting the reach that you can get online, but then balancing that up with meeting people live, whether you're picking up the phone and doing that, whether you're going out and networking and doing that. But relationships grow when you can look someone in the eye, or you can interact directly with them, and you don't do that on a keyboard.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think the whole face-to-face side of things is super important. Some people manage to make the whole Zoom meetings work. And look, being a part of an organization called BNI back in the days over COVID, I found that didn't go very well at all, especially for the trades. And the first moment people could go and start working and seeing people face-to-face, a lot of people left. However, for other people, it worked quite well. And there are, in fact, groups that are Zoom-based as well. So it's obviously different for everybody. I personally, struggled quite a fair bit with the whole COVID and lack of contact, which is why the moment all the rules were eased, I basically started running face-to-face events. And events is one of the ways I've built my business. I've shared a talk, obviously, through Lunch and Learn about that. But, mate, I think you're dead set right about the whole face-to-face side of thing. That's really how we build relationships. We are social beings as humans, and that's a vital part of what we do. Mate, I want to ask you about Imagine First. From what I know, you've written a book with that title as well. Imagine First was the name of your coaching business, is that right?
Imagine First was the name of my coaching business. So the book that I wrote was Finding Your Business Mojo. It was really about, coming back to what you were passionate about and how you helped others. So, so many people are desperately passionate about what they do, but they don't get their message out very well because they get caught up in their own story and they forget their client's story. And I'm guilty of this too. So, it's a funny thing. It's, one of those things, am I passionate about dog beds? The short answer is no, but am I passionate about helping people that have dogs that are destroying their beds? The answer to that is absolutely, because I know how frustrating that is. And so the book is really about coming back to, creating the business that you wanted to have, or that you want to have, and determining, the first part of that is determining what you want to have. And so few people are doing that when they're starting their small business. They find that they're a great technician, they're a great bookkeeper, or they're a great accountant, or they're a great, great e-commerce person, or they're, and even marketers. They know how to do marketing for everyone else, but when it comes to their own business, they quite often struggle because they're caught up in their own story. And it's about being able to take that step back and look into your client's eyes and go, but what are the clients really after?
Absolutely. And I think this whole thing reminded me of the E-Myth, and the whole E-Myth side of things talks about a lady that was basically baking cakes and decided to start her own business. But I think there's a lot of gaps within that whole story, because depending on how you look at it, some people find themselves as a mirror in that story and say, hey, look, that's me. That's exactly the problem I'm having. Other people read the book and they really don't get it. So I think it's very important to have books like yours to describe all the different variations of that. And look, I find that how is probably the most common question. Like, we're probably going to get a lot of hows from this particular podcast as to, hey, how did you start this? How did you get into the whole business? How did you build the website? How did you do the marketing and so on? So I get it. The how is quite a common natural question that people ask because they want to deconstruct everything, and that way they can understand it. However, in my opinion, I find that It's actually the what is a question that people should be focusing on. And what is it that I should be doing in order to do something? The how you can always find and deconstruct later, but having that clarity as to what we spoke about just earlier really comes to the question what, which is in the end driven by why. Now, I pick up all this from doing a lot of research in personal development, and Simon Sinek is one of the authors who I follow. How about you? Who is your inspiration? Where do you get your motivation from?
From a number of different places, and that's really for me, that's a bit of a challenge to answer. Look, a lot of the people that I am inspired by also, you see that that's not the whole story. If you follow a lot of your different gurus, your Anthony Robbins, your Gary Vaynerchuk's, look, they'll paint an awesome picture and they want you to get excited, but then they don't help you on your journey. And I find that very challenging. So for me, it is pulling, rather than having one core person who I follow, I do follow a whole range, and it's constantly evolving to be where it is to be where it is today. It really is. There is Simon Sinek, starting with why, is absolutely fantastic, but then a lot of people then don't follow that through after they've got their why. They don't follow that through to create the discipline. They don't create their standards. They don't create their structures in place. So it's really creating that environment in the first place, and then following that up with those standards and the disciplines that you're going to set for yourself, and constantly monitoring. The third phase that I look at is constantly monitoring, is that giving you the results that you're after? So when it comes to who, there's very, very few people that are putting the whole picture together from my perspective, and that's where I would follow a range of people.
I think that's a good answer, because overall there's no one particular person that can provide you with the full solution. I follow a bunch of people, and there's a great book called Who Not How by Ben Harvey, who talks about the fact that rather than trying to do everything yourself, you got to find the right people who are the best at what they do, and this way you're able to be clear about what it is that you need to achieve, but you actually don't get involved or micromanage those particular tasks. Yes, it does come with a price tag. However, you're not gambling on that, and you get things done a lot faster as well.
Let's chat about that. So many small business owners feel that they can't afford to hire people to do different things. And so they're busy, absolutely flat out, doing a whole lot of stuff that they're not very good at, right? And here's where the challenge really kicks in, is having the discipline. It really is a series of tipping points, and getting enough revenue that you can then start handing work over as quickly as possible to people who are experts in that field. That's why when it comes to the e-commerce side of things, I come to you and say, hey, what should I do? With the advertising, we talk about that, and we have some great conversations around that, because I am looking at different things, and I'm not an advertiser and I don't know how to go and create ads. The marketing side of things is something that's a little bit different, and so and I believe I work with your team about, hey, how do we want to market our business? And I look at the advice that you go and go, okay, so the challenge we have is that we don't have one single audience. Whereas if you're going to create a business, try and have just one audience, then it'll go really super awesome. If you've got 2 or 3 audiences, sometimes they compete with each other. And unfortunately, with our dog beds, here's where we're at, because we have our residential audience, which a lot of strategies would be nice and simple if we only had that audience. But because we have a commercial audience as well, we can't implement residential audience strategies into a commercial environment because they conflict with each other.
Absolutely. Well, look, let's talk about the marketing, I guess, for your business. Well, traditionally you've got 3 forms of marketing, and a lot of the time people rely on one form more than the others, purely because it's simple, or you can pay somebody to do it. But there is inbound marketing, typically your website. People find your website through ads or organically and make the inquiries or buy. Great, happy days if that works for you. Outbound, which is all the cold calling, which is all mail outs and basically contacting people. That's typically designed for B2Bs, because B2Bs are fairly idle. They're not really there to search for you all the time. Most of the time they're busy with something else, and typically they rely on word of mouth. So outbound marketing is super important for you to get that foot in the door, introduce yourself, get noticed, and then from there, big things typically happen. And the third one is typically all about networking or partnering with people. And this is the one thing that works particularly well for people, networks like BNI or Chamber of Commerce or something like that, where you get to mingle with people on a regular basis. And it sort of works on the basis of that outbound marketing idea that I just mentioned. But it's just about being personal and really educating people on what you do, how you work, and potentially who you're associated with. So those are the three main directions. I mean, we can obviously break that down into other sectors, but I find that typically people get stuck with their website and they want their website to do miracles. However, there's obviously a limited number of people searching, and you've got to consider your competitors and the size of the market. I do find that channels like B2B are a real challenge. And with your business, you've managed to partner up with some big names. Do you want to tell us, share a bit of a strategy as to how you achieve something like that?
Be awesome and rely on luck. Look, every successful business has an element of luck involved, and I'm the first to say that. Hey, if you look at Netflix, one of their lucky breaks was the fact that Blockbuster turned them down, right? They were going to sell the business for $1 million or something along those lines. And Blockbuster went, yeah, no, right? Whatever number they had, Blockbuster wouldn't get there. And that was their lucky break, because that made them go, great, so now if we can't do this, we need to be awesome at what we're doing. One of my lucky breaks was I got a call from the RSPCA. And if you're dealing in the pet care industry, you can't get a bigger endorsement than the RSPCA. They had challenge with a supplier, and with that, and it was partly supply chain, it was partly a number of different issues. So I rocked up, being brand new to the industry or brand new to taking it seriously. The one thing that we had done was we were very easy to find for the audience that we wanted. So Chew-Proof dog beds, we don't sell dog beds. We sell indestructible dog beds or durable dog beds, tough dog beds. We don't, if you've got a fluffy pup that wants to sit on a cushion or sleep in your bed, you're not our client. And we know that really, really well. We're super clear about that. Now, because we've niched right down into that's our market, when the RSPCA were looking for an alternate supplier for a tough dog bed, they found us. And I can remember the first phone call from Hayley at the RSPCA. She said, is that tough dog stuff? And I said, Chew-Proof, tough dog stuff? Absolutely, that's who we are. And she said, great. I'm from the RSPCA and I need some beds. Now, at that stage, I didn't know whether she needed 3 beds or what she was looking for. I said, fantastic. Well, let me come out and have a chat with you and find out what your needs are. And so I made sure that I was out there, as it's the RSPCA. I dropped everything, right? And literally went out there that morning. I took our different standard size beds and a tape measure with me. And we're having a chat about what her needs were and what just happened. They'd actually just got a grant to restock their major facility in Brisbane and also in Cairns with beds completely. So before the end of that meeting, I just made sure that she understood I was just there to help her solve a problem. Now, her problem was that dogs were ripping through beds as quickly as they could build them, and that's how it felt. So their maintenance costs were really super high, and they had a budget now to spend on durable dog beds. So great. So we looked at her kennels and they didn't fit our beds, or our beds didn't fit their kennels. And I just looked at her and said, that's okay. We'll just resize them. And she looked at me and said, what? Because our primary competitor didn't think of just serving their customer needs. It was like, hang on, this is what you get. And as soon as I said, well, tell me what you need and we'll just do that. And she said, oh my God. Before the end of that meeting, I had the budget that they had and the quantity, and I just needed to make sure that I could do that. And I had the sale. Within 3 weeks, they had restocked both Wacol and Cairns. The beds were delivered and all the right sizes that they needed. And they couldn't fathom that somebody just wanted to help them.
Wow. So how many beds are we talking? Because that's not a secret.
Just shy of 250 beds.
Wow, that's pretty full
Right.
on.
So we had to resize just 100 of them in 2 different sizes. And the beds for cans, they didn't need to be modified. They wanted to have mesh mats up in cans. Down here, they wanted to have a Riplock PVC. They wanted the toughest mat they could get because they get a lot of difficult dogs, would be the most polite way of putting it. To date, so they got delivered last December, and to date, in Wacol, they've not had to replace a mat at all. That they just can't believe, right? And we're a bit shocked about it too, to be honest. However, we understand that every now and again you are going to get a particular dog that's going to rip through the mat, and we'll just replace the mat, right? Within 12 months, we'll just replace the mat. They couldn't get that would be that simple, right? So they're still amazed even though they haven't used it yet. But they know that we're very genuine about that, and that we would just look at what did they want and let's serve that. So the luck that I had was the supply chain challenges. I did have the stock that they needed, could supply on very short notice. At the time, I didn't know a fabricator, but running Brisbane small business, and here's where all my worlds collided at once. Running Brisbane small business, I just put it out there. Hey, does anyone know a fabricator? Found one and said, great. So how much can we do this for? This is the quantity that I'm going to need. Got a reasonable price, and was able to build all of that into what we were doing for the RSPCA. I couldn't get the price down to quite what I needed to, so I just wrote off another portion. Went, here's a donation, and they were like, that's amazing. We can see that you're bending over backwards just to help us. But for me, it was just basic customer service. I was just looking after solving the problem that they had.
And this is what the power of B2B is. I mean, once you get to know the people and they get to see that you are the real deal, that you are the person who can solve their problem, and that there's really no competition that would choose you over anyone else based around that. I think the whole price side of things is really important as well. Your beds are obviously fairly well priced in comparison to some of the some of your competing brands. I do recall one of Zig Ziglar's books about the cost versus price side of things, and I do find that a lot of people do forget about that half the time. There are people who would buy something very cheap, and then they have to basically get that replaced eventually with something more expensive, but it takes them time. And the whole price thing is really what what you pay initially, but it's the interval that is stretched over a period of time, which is then turned into cost. So if you buy something cheap straight away, it doesn't serve your purpose. You end up spending more over time, which is where the whole cost over a period of time goes up. And I think with your particular beds, even though they're more expensive, they actually end up being more affordable to customers, and they don't have to stress about those particular issues either. So that's awesome, mate. That's really, really good. So with TrueProof, what's the plan, mate? Where do you want to take that business? I mean, certainly you've got your own goals, and it'd be great to find out more about them.
Well, I'm kind of being pushed to go worldwide.
Oh, wow.
Strangely. So, and once again, it all requires a little bit of luck from time to time. Okay. So because we have a very, as I said, a very tight niche market that we care about following, people keep finding us, right? Our SEO on that market is really awesome. And that's done as much by accident as design. Obviously, Alexei and his team have helped with the design and making sure that the back end and the secret stuff of SEO is set up awesomely. But on top of that, we don't do a hell of a lot of maintenance on that. We just come up awesomely in searches. I got called from a club in New Zealand the other day. They were kind of complaining that I wasn't in New Zealand. Actually, that's how it came out. Why aren't you here? You should be in New Zealand because we can't get a reasonable dog bed. So we will be in New Zealand within 3 months is the short answer.
Well,
I was speaking to a breeder last night. He didn't know he was a breeder when I made the call. He'd just inquired about buying a dog bed and put an inquiry on my site. I had a missed phone call when I got home yesterday afternoon, and when I rang it back, I was just having a chat with the guy. He bred Rottweilers, or breeds Rottweilers. I said, so how many have you got? He said, oh, I've got 10. As a breeder, I'm a bit crap because I keep keeping way too many of them. We're having a chat about it, and he said, have you got a deal for breeders? And I said, of course I've got a deal for breeders. So he said, could you do any better than that? I said, look, I'll tell you what, instead of trying to beat me down for the last, for another $50 here, how about we talk about if I could help you make more money? And he went, oh, okay. And I said, well, we've got an affiliate program. And if you basically can share our story and share your success, both with people who are buying your dogs, but also with the audience you've got. How big's your audience? Oh, mate, it's going okay. We've got 42,000 followers. Okay. Then I think rather than another $50 discount, how about we set you up as an affiliate straight away? He said, that'd be awesome. What do I have to do for that? I said, don't you worry, I'll do that, and did that last night. So he said, oh, and do you sell them in South Africa? I said, why? He said, I don't know why, but I've got a really awesome following in South Africa. So if we're going to do this, you need to find a way of getting over there. I said, we'll sort that out when it comes. So
that's awesome. I think there's a couple of concepts here that people need to know about. Well, first of all, you're looking at the whole win-win scenario where when people are wanting to drop the price and you're not talking like a single transaction, there's always ground for negotiating something bigger. And I think when people understand that rather than getting a small discount, but instead you can actually have passive income coming through something that's already in place, it really becomes a no-brainer. I think also you partner this way much closer with those people and really turn them from customers into partners, which is great. I also think that when it comes to ventures like that, it's all about really creating demand, because there's no way in the world you could have gone and ordered 250 beds straight away and then sell them. And I think this is where a lot of e-com businesses really fail. They buy a lot of stock, they think something is really good, and it's really their gut feel that's driving the whole thing, or potentially someone telling them phonies or whatnot. I've seen a lot of horror stories, but all I can say is it's much safer to go with a model where you create demand, people would actually buy from you. And if anyone's looking to start an online store, I encourage everyone to look into researching their products and potentially starting with a pre-launch. Just do a better deal, do a better price. Don't need to have a specific product. Say, hey, look, we don't have stock right now. Stock will arrive in XYZ. And you'll actually be able to test the market before the whole thing happens. And when big things come through, like the RSPCA, for example, I think what's important is to have the chain of logistics all organized beforehand, but you don't need to have the actual stock ordered. I think this is really where a lot of e-com businesses unfortunately fail. And I've had way too many conversations with people like, hey, I've got so much stock, can we do something with that? Frankly, it gets quite tiring helping people in those extreme situations all the time, because marketing does cost money, and then not all the time you can actually align it with the market problems as well. But maybe luck is what it's all about. I think
look, it's a combination of a little bit of luck, but luck meeting preparedness, right? So if you're not prepared and you have that lucky situation, you won't realize that you just had that lucky situation, right? Yes, we had an excess of stock in one. We thought we had 6 months of stock. The RSPCA took half of that. So, and that's the thing. So we've been on a constant growth curve, and that does take finance. It does. We have an Australian component to our stock, and also an imported component. Our imported componentry our frames will take between 2 to 3 months to turn up. So we have to have enough stock for that scenario. The challenge that we're currently going through, because you're always going to find new challenges as you're growing, it's not going to be one size fits all. And you'll find that as you're growing, new challenges will come along. And so the new challenges that we had is when we started going to the Kennel Council rescue side of the industry, that their requirements were very different from the domestic requirements. So, domestically in my B2C, my e-commerce business, that sells a lot more extra large beds, and then large beds, and then it's about half of what those two have for the medium beds. The challenge that I've recently come into is that in growing significantly our Kennel Council rescue side of the business, that they want large and medium beds and some small beds. We all traditionally were selling next to no small beds. So I was basically going to stop that line. And then I had a kennel go, I want small beds. Oh, crap. Okay, so now I've got to get small beds, right? So we got small beds. But in a large order that we placed around 3 months ago, very, very large order, we bought 1,000 frames. And thought that would last us for quite some time. The problem we're having is we're selling into more kennels that we've increased our ecom, so our extra large beds and large beds, and we've increased our kennels, so large beds and medium beds, but we used to sell more extra large beds and we sold large beds. And so now we've got twice as much stock sitting in extra large than we do in large. And we're about to have to get a new order, because even though we've got a lot of stock, because I'm in fear of the stock lasting, the large bed frames lasting for 3 months. So you'll come up with new challenges as you find new markets that need the solution that you're offering. And that's just it's part of the excitement and that you're having growing a business. And here's where, having the two different markets that are acquiring the same product is creating, just an interesting diversity and interesting new challenges for us on a constant basis. So it's good fun, frustrating, and exciting all at the same time.
Very cool. This question may be a little bit broad, but I thought I'd ask it anyway. So starting Facebook groups, coaching, writing books, starting ecom. Any tips for people that are wanting to get into something that's really quite life-changing? Because I think all of those things have made quite an impact.
Yeah, make sure that what you're doing is relying on the skills that you had from the previous scenario. As a recruiter, one of the challenges I used to have was people will go, oh, look, can you help my brother-in-law? He wants to stop being this and start doing that, and it would not be related. And the short answer is I can't help, right? It's the same when you're trying to work with someone and coach someone, that you need to prepare yourself for a transition. So basically with the e-commerce side of the business, I still believe that I don't know what I'm doing. In the pet care industry side of my business, I still believe that I don't know what I'm doing, right? But what I have done is relied on the skills that I've developed along the way to be developing the business as it is. And I'm still just scratching the surface, okay? I know that Australia has 5 million dogs. I know that around 10% of them are going to be destructive style dogs, and that they're going to do that. So, there's potentially 500,000 beds domestically that I could sell. On top of that, those dogs all end up, well, some of those dogs will end up in the rescue industry. Some of them, their parents will go away and they need to be looked after in kennels and so on and so forth. So with all of that, there's a lot more than 500,000 beds that I could sell. So could I do that tomorrow? No, I can't. But what we're doing is relying on the skills that I've been developing all along. So I didn't just go from doing recruitment, and I actually started life as an accountant. So there's a whole other story there.
But I didn't know that, by the way.
Well, when I started as an accountant, when I wanted to get out of accounting, I actually went into recruiting, but I recruited accountants. So I could use the skill set that I had as an accountant and understanding the different roles in accounting in that. When I wanted to leave the recruitment industry, I'd been running my own business for the last 15 years. And so then I could rely on doing consulting to small businesses because I had a background. I pretty much knew what not to do. I'd done most of that. So, when I looked at going into creating a community, that didn't happen overnight. And I did every mistake known on earth in trying to build a business community, and through just constantly persisting and applying good leadership skills, I built that community, and that was just based on leadership. So then when I was doing the dog beds, I just solved a problem from being Australia's worst dog trainer to go, okay, I did it as a hobby for 2.5 years before, going, okay, I need to take this seriously. And the very first thing I knew when I need to take it seriously, I need to get outside advice, because I knew nothing about, and I worked out how hard I was making it for people to buy the beds. And this was with a prior incumbent to Alexei. We ran with them for around 9 months. And so they first created the WooCommerce site for us, and people could actually buy more than one item at a time. Who would have thought that would be what customers wanted? They took us on a very good journey, but then when people like the RSPCA were calling, and I saw a bigger picture, I knew I needed to take it more seriously. So I hunted for someone who was an expert in that field. So each step of the way, I've relied on the experience that I had before to take it to the next level, and then partner with experts in those fields. So so when you're wanting to change tack, depending on how dramatic that is, one, if you can start that, do your research, start exploring, and understand as much as you possibly can about that field. If you can dip your toe in and do that as a hobby, or you can do that in a minor capacity to start with, so that you can get to understand a little bit more about the industry, that would be what I'd be encouraging you to do, so that then when you want to go after that, then you can rely on both the background that you brought to that and your new knowledge of that particular field to then take it to that next level.
I think that's a super advice, because overall people are trying to limit themselves because they don't know certain things, and they think, hey, in order to do marketing, I need to learn how to build websites and run Google ads and SEO, and then know how to sell, and so on and so on. And it becomes quite overwhelming as well. The biggest issue for me is not so much learning these things, because some of them are actually quite interesting and people do get quite involved in websites and whatnot. It's more the sustainability and the practicality of the whole thing as well. Because if you learn how to do websites, you get so caught up in the whole thing of being a perfectionist, and then it's just a never-ending game of making those small changes that don't really impact that much to the end result. And I think this is really where a lot of people miss out on the bigger picture and the bigger gains as well. I think you're absolutely right. If you can focus on the main skills that you acquire over time, and you understand that this is your magic, if you like, and you're able to sort of keep applying that and turn it into new skills and whatnot, that's really the true way for you to stay an expert in your field and truly apply that as well. For me personally, I find that there's 3 things you need to do as an expert. You need to learn something, you need to do it, and then you need to be able to teach other people. And that really what defines an expert as well.
And that's a really critical point, that last one, is that you need to build your business, but also your team. Now, I consider Alexei and his team as part of my team. So, I treat them as if they worked with me in an office. They don't like that sometimes, but we'll get there another day.
It's all right, it works.
But I think of all the different service providers that work for me as if they were employees. And and that comes with both the positives, and by treating Alexei and his team like that, I have expertise far greater than I could have myself. They can provide feedback for me. I make sure, the one thing I also have learned to do is to not be a control freak, but to try and understand the concepts in all different fields, so that, not so that I can control it, but so that I can understand the results that should come from something, and I can encourage best performance. Because I'm not expecting Alexei to be an expert in pet care. Okay, but I am expecting him to go, okay, so here's who I'm looking to go after. So what are the things that you can do? And then we have a discussion around that. And Alexei quite often thinks I'm not listening to him, but I'll come back 3 weeks later and go, great, now I can do this part and that part, but I can't do the other. But and then we'll get into a discussion around that. And sometimes it is because the commercial market and the residential market have different expectations. And, you know, and while some of the strategies would be awesome for me to implement, it's going to really annoy the commercial market.
Absolutely.
And we've got, and that's where, you know, just a different scenario, and that's okay. And that's where we sit down and talk about it. I'm sure that Alexei sits down and scratches his head and go, what's Kevin on about some days? But I think it's a relationship that's working really well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, when it comes to businesses, you know your business better than anyone else. And, you know, going back to the previous topic of just focusing on the one thing, I think that's really what you need to align yourself with, because if you're able to understand what's good for you and your business, then you're able to make the right decisions. Don't wait for other people to tell you what's right and what's wrong, because oftentimes they're being guided by the numbers. They don't understand the whole story. They don't understand the whole marketing. And as much as you like people to understand everything about your business, it's just not possible. And I think, you know, simplifying things but having the key points is really what it's all about. You know, every product is different. Every business is different. And I think that if you're getting caught up too much on competition or the price, then you're doing it wrong. You know, I've seen plenty of businesses that have been able to dominate super competitive niches due to the fact that the product was either more superior, or there was a better sales process behind the scenes, or there was a person behind the business that actually drove the business completely different. And, you know, there's many stories like that. I'm not going to go into any big names, but if you look into some niche businesses around, you know, I've got a mate of mine who runs a business called Gutter Night, for example. You know, who would have thought that a business like that, you know, putting little mesh guards on people's roofs, preventing those gutters from being clogged up, would go national and turn into a franchise. Just the one little product that basically solves one specific problem. Well, a couple of problems, but within that sort of niche, could really go that big. So yeah, plenty of examples like that. Mate, this has been a pretty long podcast, but I'm really enjoying it. And I think, you know, especially people from BSB will definitely learn a few more things about you. If anyone wanted to find out more about you, your product, BSB or anything, what's the best way to get in touch?
So if you do Google Brisbane Small Business, you'll find we're very easy to find. We'll be, basically there'll be a Facebook community of 20,000 that you'll see. Join up, reach out to me from there. Look, there's not many Kevin Gammies floating around, so if you Google me in any way, shape or form, you can find us. If you go to trueproof.com.au, you can reach out through there as well. You know, I do name things fairly simply, and I think that's part of the strength that I have in my marketing, is that I normally name things to Google search that I would be looking for. So, you know, so with that, if you are looking to reach out for me, just track me down through any of those things and reach out and say hi.
I think that's another gem as well. If you're starting out, guys, try to pick up a good business name that describes what you do. I mean, I love the whole brand game, but as a startup, it's very difficult to make that fly unless the business speaks for itself, mate. So there's another tip right there. Mate, thanks very much for finding the time to you know, do this podcast. Like I said, it's been one of those things I wanted to do for quite some time. Hopefully our listeners have picked up a few tips and ideas. I think stories like this really do inspire quite a lot of people. And I find that, you know, inspiring business owners, especially at times like this where interest rates go up, there's a lot of uncertainty and stuff, is really super important, mate. Thanks very much. Thanks for making it.
Thank you.